Today, we're about to explore most clear Bigfoot footage recorded, from a body cam recording that Yellowstone officials have been trying to bury, to a man who thought he was filming a bear, only to have a horrific Bigfoot chase him. David Kellerman had built his reputation on finding things that others couldn't or wouldn't. After 15 years in military intelligence, specializing in reconnaissance and surveillance operations, he had transitioned to private investigation work that often took him to places most people would never dare to venture. During his service, David had developed skills that few civilians possessed. He could move through any terrain without leaving traces, set up surveillance equipment that would remain undetected for months, and analyze behavioral patterns with an accuracy that had made him legendary among his peers. The case that brought David to the Humboldt County wilderness seemed straightforward enough. Margaret Thornfield, an elderly widow from San Francisco, had hired him to investigate the disappearance of her grandson, 22-year-old Timothy Thornfield, who had vanished during a solo camping trip 6 months earlier. The official search had been called off after 3 weeks, with authorities concluding that Timothy had likely fallen victim to harsh wilderness conditions. But Margaret wasn't satisfied with the official explanation. Timothy had been an experienced outdoorsman and Eagle Scout who knew the forests of Northern California better than most park rangers. She was convinced that something else had happened to her grandson. The official investigation had been thorough, but ultimately fruitless. Search and rescue teams had combed hundreds of square miles of forest using helicopters, tracking dogs, and thermal imaging equipment. They had found Timothy's abandoned campsite relatively quickly, but the scene had raised more questions than answers. His tent was still standing, his food supplies were untouched, and his expensive camera equipment was scattered around the site as if he had left in a hurry. David's investigation had led him deep into the Six Rivers National Forest, following Timothy's planned route through some of the most remote terrain in California. His methodical approach had already uncovered several clues that suggested Timothy's disappearance was far from ordinary. Strange footprints around the abandoned campsite, unusual hair samples caught on tree branches, and several damaged trees that showed signs of being deliberately broken. The footprints were unlike anything David had encountered. They measured approximately 16 inches in length and 8 inches in width, with a depth that suggested something weighing at least 400 pounds. The stride pattern indicated bipedal movement, but the gait was different from human locomotion. It was on his 4th day in the forest that David made the discovery that would change everything. While investigating a remote valley about 2 miles from Timothy's last known location, David's motion-activated trail cameras had captured something extraordinary during the previous night. The footage showed a massive, bipedal creature moving through the forest with purposeful intelligence, carrying what appeared to be human belongings. David's military training had taught him to remain calm under pressure, but reviewing the footage on his camera's LCD screen made his hands shake with excitement and disbelief. The creature was unlike anything he had seen in his years of wilderness operations around the world. Standing at least 8 feet tall and covered in dark, coarse hair, it moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for something so large. The creature's movement patterns were particularly fascinating to David's trained eye. It demonstrated an understanding of forest navigation that surpassed even the most experienced human woodsman. The being moved along natural corridors through the dense vegetation, avoiding areas where its passage would leave obvious signs, and seemed to understand how to use terrain features to remain concealed from potential observers. More disturbing was what the creature was carrying. David could clearly make out a backpack, camping gear, and what looked like camera equipment, items that matched the description of Timothy Thornfield's missing belongings. The implications were staggering. Not only had David potentially captured the first clear footage of a Bigfoot, but the creature appeared to be connected to Timothy's disappearance. David's investigation took on new urgency as he realized he might be dealing with something far more significant than a simple missing person case. He began setting up additional cameras throughout the valley, creating a surveillance network that would monitor the creature's movements and hopefully lead him to answers about Timothy's fate. The surveillance network David established was based on techniques he had learned during counterinsurgency operations in Afghanistan. He positioned cameras at natural choke points where any large creature would be forced to pass, used camouflaged solar panels to ensure continuous power, and established overlapping fields of view that would make it impossible for anything to move through the area undetected. The breakthrough came on his 6th night in the forest. David's cameras captured not just one creature, but an entire family group, adults and what appeared to be juveniles, moving through the valley in a coordinated pattern. The footage revealed behavior that was unmistakably intelligent. The creatures communicated through complex vocalizations, used tools to manipulate their environment, and demonstrated problem-solving abilities that challenged everything science thought it knew about unknown primates. The family group consisted of what appeared to be 2 adult males, 3 adult females, and 4 juveniles of varying ages. Their social interactions were remarkably sophisticated, with clear hierarchies and role assignments. The larger male seemed to serve as a scout, moving ahead of the group to assess potential threats or obstacles. The females appeared to be responsible for the care and education of the juveniles, while the second male brought up the rear, ensuring the group's security. Most remarkably, the cameras captured the creatures interacting with human artifacts in ways that suggested they understood their purpose and origin. They examined Timothy's camping equipment with obvious curiosity, handled his camera gear with surprising gentleness, and even appeared to be attempting to operate some of the electronic devices. David realized he was documenting something unprecedented. Not just evidence of Bigfoot's existence, but proof that these creatures possessed intelligence and curiosity about human technology. The footage showed them living in sophisticated shelters constructed from natural materials, using primitive tools, and maintaining what appeared to be a complex social structure. The shelters were particularly impressive, demonstrating engineering principles that rivaled human construction techniques. The creatures had woven branches and vegetation into waterproof structures that provided protection from the elements while remaining virtually invisible to casual observation. The interiors were organized with designated areas for sleeping, food storage, and what appeared to be tool-making activities. But the most shocking discovery came when David's cameras captured footage of Timothy Thornfield himself, alive, apparently unharmed, and living among the creatures. The young man appeared to have been adopted into their group, participating in their daily activities and showing no signs of distress or captivity. The footage suggested that rather than being a victim, Timothy had become an observer and perhaps even a student of these remarkable beings. The implications of this discovery were staggering. Timothy appeared to have been living with the creatures for months, learning their behaviors and possibly even their communication methods. In several clips, David observed Timothy participating in what appeared to be teaching sessions where the adult creatures demonstrated various survival techniques and forest navigation skills. The young man seemed to have adapted remarkably well to his new environment, showing none of the psychological trauma typically associated with prolonged captivity or isolation. Timothy's integration into the group was so complete that he had begun to adopt some of their behavioral patterns. He moved through the forest with the same silent grace as his adoptive family, communicated through a combination of gestures and vocalizations that the creatures seemed to understand, and participated in their daily routines of foraging, shelter maintenance, and group activities. David's analysis of the footage revealed even more disturbing details. The creatures appeared to have a sophisticated understanding of human technology and behavior. They had carefully preserved Timothy's electronic equipment, keeping it dry and protected in what appeared to be a specially constructed shelter. More remarkably, they seemed to understand the purpose of the cameras and recording devices, occasionally positioning them to capture specific activities or interactions. The social dynamics within the creature group were complex and fascinating. David observed clear hierarchies with older individuals teaching younger ones and specific roles assigned to different members of the community. They demonstrated advanced problem-solving abilities, working together to construct elaborate shelters, create tools from natural materials, and even develop what appeared to be a primitive form of agriculture, cultivating certain plants and fungi in designated areas of their territory. The creatures' tool use was particularly sophisticated. They fashioned implements from stone, wood, and bone that served specific purposes. Digging tools for extracting roots and tubers, cutting implements for processing plant materials, and even what appeared to be primitive weapons for hunting small game. The tools showed evidence of careful craftsmanship and were maintained and improved over time. David's military instincts told him that this discovery was too significant to handle alone. The footage he had captured would revolutionize our understanding of human evolution, primate intelligence, and the hidden ecosystems that still existed in North America's most remote wilderness areas. But he also understood that such evidence would attract attention from government agencies that might not have the public's best interests at heart. His concerns proved justified when David returned to civilization and attempted to contact Timothy's grandmother with news of his discovery. Within hours of uploading the footage to a secure server, David found himself under surveillance by unmarked vehicles and receiving visits from individuals who claimed to represent various federal agencies but carried credentials that didn't quite check out. The first visit came at 6:30 a.m., just 2 days after David had returned from the forest. 3 individuals in dark suits appeared at his office, claiming to represent a joint task force investigating unusual wildlife activity in national forests. Their leader, who identified himself only as Agent Morrison, was polite but firm in his questioning about David's activities in the 6 Rivers National Forest. The visitors were professional and polite, but their message was clear. David had stumbled upon something that was considered a matter of national security. They explained that the existence of these creatures had been known to certain government agencies for decades, and that a careful protocol had been established to manage any interactions or discoveries. David's footage, they claimed, could disrupt delicate research programs and potentially endanger both the creatures and any humans who might encounter them. Agent Morrison revealed that the government had been aware of these creature populations since the 1960s. When military personnel conducting training exercises in remote wilderness areas began reporting encounters with unknown bipedal primates. Initial investigations had been conducted under the auspices of various classified programs, with findings that were deemed too sensitive for public release. The pressure to surrender his evidence intensified rapidly. David received offers to purchase his footage for substantial sums, followed by increasingly aggressive demands that he turn over all materials related to his investigation. When he refused, the harassment escalated to include break-ins at his office, tampering with his vehicle, and threats against his personal safety. The offers were substantial, initially starting at $500,000 for all footage and related materials, then escalating to over $2 million when David continued to refuse. The money was offered through intermediaries who claimed to represent private research foundations, but David's intelligence background allowed him to recognize the hallmarks of government-front organizations. David realized he was caught in a situation that went far beyond a simple missing person case. The government's reaction to his discovery suggested that authorities were already aware of these creatures' existence and were actively working to suppress any evidence that might reach the public. The implications were staggering. If Bigfoot was real and the government knew about it, how many other secrets were being kept from the American people? The harassment campaign against David was sophisticated and relentless. His phone calls were monitored, his internet activity was tracked, and his financial accounts were subjected to mysterious audits and freezes. Former military colleagues who had maintained contact with him suddenly became unavailable, and his professional network began to distance themselves from his work. The message was clear: cooperate with the suppression effort or face complete professional and personal destruction. David's bank accounts were frozen under the pretense of a tax investigation. His professional licenses were challenged by regulatory agencies, citing anonymous complaints. and his landlord received visits from individuals claiming to be conducting background checks for security clearances. The psychological pressure was intense and unrelenting, designed to isolate him from support systems and make resistance seem futile. But David's military training had prepared him for psychological warfare, and he refused to be intimidated. Instead, he began documenting the harassment he was experiencing, creating a parallel record of government suppression that was almost as compelling as his original Bigfoot footage. The pattern of intimidation and cover-up suggested that these creatures represented something far more significant than just an unknown species. They were evidence of a hidden world that powerful interests were determined to keep secret. Using skills learned during his military career, David began taking precautions to protect both himself and his evidence. He created multiple copies of his footage, stored them in secure locations, and established protocols for their release if anything happened to him. He also reached out to trusted contacts in the scientific community, sharing his findings with researchers who had the expertise to understand their significance. David's security protocols were based on techniques used to protect classified intelligence in hostile environments. He established dead drops in multiple locations, created encrypted digital copies stored on secure servers in different countries, and developed a network of trusted individuals who would release the information if he disappeared or was incapacitated. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a primatologist at UC Berkeley who had been quietly studying Bigfoot reports for over a decade, was among the first scientists to review David's footage. Her analysis confirmed what David had suspected. The creatures displayed behavioral patterns and physical characteristics that were consistent with a highly intelligent primate species that had somehow remained hidden from mainstream science. Dr. Rodriguez had been conducting her research in secret, knowing that open investigation of Bigfoot phenomena would destroy her academic career. She had accumulated a database of over 3,000 reported encounters, analyzed hundreds of footprint casts, and even collected hair and tissue samples that defied classification. David's footage provided the visual confirmation she had been seeking for years. The genetic analysis of hair samples that David had collected provided even more compelling evidence. The DNA showed characteristics that were clearly primate, but didn't match any known species in scientific databases. Most intriguingly, the genetic markers suggested a lineage that had diverged from human ancestors much more recently than previously thought possible. The DNA analysis revealed a genetic profile that was approximately 96% similar to modern humans, closer than chimpanzees or any other known primate species. The remaining 4% showed unique characteristics that suggested adaptation to specific environmental conditions and possibly enhanced physical capabilities. The genetic evidence supported the theory that these creatures represented a surviving branch of the human family tree. Dr. Rodriguez's preliminary findings indicated that these creatures might represent a surviving population of an archaic hominid species, possibly related to Homo erectus or an unknown branch of the human family tree. The implications for our understanding of human evolution were profound. If these beings had survived in North America for thousands of years, it would completely rewrite the story of human migration and development. The scientific analysis also revealed disturbing evidence of government knowledge and involvement. Several of the hair samples contained traces of synthetic compounds that suggested the creatures had been exposed to human-made chemicals, possibly through deliberate feeding or medical treatment. This evidence supported David's growing suspicion that government agencies had been studying and possibly managing these populations for decades. Chemical analysis revealed the presence of compounds used in veterinary tranquilizers, suggesting that the creatures had been captured and studied at some point. There were also traces of synthetic vitamins and minerals that indicated supplemental feeding programs. The evidence painted a picture of long-term government monitoring and management of these populations. As word of David's discovery began to spread through underground networks of researchers and cryptozoology enthusiasts, the pressure from government agencies intensified. David found himself the target of a sophisticated disinformation campaign designed to discredit his findings and destroy his reputation. False stories about his military service appeared online, his professional licenses were challenged by regulatory agencies, and former clients were contacted and pressured to file complaints against him. The disinformation campaign was remarkably thorough and well coordinated. Fake social media accounts began spreading rumors about David's mental health and professional competence. Doctored documents appeared online, suggesting he had been discharged from the military under questionable circumstances. Even his family members were contacted by individuals claiming to be journalists or researchers, asking leading questions designed to elicit statements that could be used to undermine his credibility. Professional trolls flooded online forums with posts questioning David's military record, his investigative methods, and his mental stability. Fake reviews appeared on professional rating sites, describing fictional negative experiences with his services. The campaign was so sophisticated that it clearly required significant resources and coordination, further confirming David's suspicions about government involvement. The situation reached a crisis point when David received credible intelligence that a raid on his secure storage facilities was being planned. Realizing that his evidence was in immediate danger, he made the decision to release everything to the public through multiple channels simultaneously. The footage was uploaded to dozens of video platforms, sent to news organizations around the world, and distributed through encrypted networks that would make it impossible to suppress completely. David's release strategy was carefully planned and executed with military precision. He coordinated the simultaneous release across multiple time zones, ensuring that the footage would be available on dozens of platforms before authorities could react. He also included detailed documentation of the harassment campaign against him, creating a narrative that explained why the evidence was being suppressed. The public release of David's footage created an immediate sensation. Within hours, the videos had been viewed millions of times and were being analyzed by experts around the world. The quality and consistency of the evidence made it impossible to dismiss as a hoax, and the documentation of government suppression efforts added credibility to claims that authorities had been hiding the truth about Bigfoot for decades. The initial response was overwhelming. Major news networks picked up the story within hours, and social media platforms were flooded with discussions, analyses, and debates about the footage. The hashtag Bigfoot Revealed began trending worldwide, and the videos were shared millions of times across all platforms. The scientific community's response was divided but intense. Mainstream researchers who had previously dismissed Bigfoot as pseudoscience were forced to confront evidence that met rigorous standards of documentation and analysis. The footage showed anatomical details, behavioral patterns, and environmental interactions that would be nearly impossible to fabricate convincingly. Leading primatologists from around the world began requesting access to the raw footage for analysis. Dr. Jane Goodall, the renowned chimpanzee researcher, issued a statement calling for serious scientific investigation of the evidence. The International Union for Conservation of Nature announced the formation of a special committee to evaluate the footage and its implications for primate taxonomy. Most compelling was the documentation of Timothy Thornfield's apparent integration into the creature's social group. Anthropologists noted that his behavior in the footage suggested he had learned to communicate with the beings and had been accepted as a member of their community. The implications for our understanding of interspecies communication and intelligence were profound. The international response to David's revelations was swift and varied. European scientists, less constrained by American government pressure, began organizing expeditions to search for similar creatures in their own wilderness areas. Indigenous communities around the world came forward with their own stories and evidence of encounters with similar beings, suggesting that these creatures might represent a global phenomenon rather than a uniquely North American mystery. The Smithsonian Institution announced plans for a comprehensive analysis of the footage, while the National Geographic Society committed funding for follow-up expeditions to the area where David had made his discoveries. international research teams from Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom requested permission to conduct their own investigations in American wilderness areas. The government's response to the footage's release was swift and predictable. Official statements dismissed the evidence as elaborate hoaxes, while behind the scenes, agencies worked to discredit David and suppress further investigation. The area where he had made his discoveries was suddenly declared off-limits due to environmental concerns, and researchers who attempted to verify his findings were turned away by armed guards. The Forest Service issued emergency closure orders for large sections of the Six Rivers National Forest, citing concerns about endangered species habitat and fire danger. Military personnel were deployed to enforce the closures, and aircraft were prohibited from flying over the restricted areas. The response was so disproportionate that it only served to validate David's claims about government cover-up efforts. But the damage to the cover-up had already been done. David's footage had provided the world with undeniable evidence that intelligent bipedal creatures were living in North America's wilderness areas, and that government agencies had been aware of their existence for years. The revelation sparked a global conversation about what other secrets might be hidden from public view, and whether citizens had the right to know about discoveries that could fundamentally change our understanding of life on Earth. Timothy Thornfield's fate remained a mystery, as attempts to return to the area where he had been filmed were blocked by federal authorities. His grandmother, Margaret, filed lawsuits demanding access to her grandson and answers about his condition, but legal proceedings were stalled by claims of national security and public safety concerns. The legal battle that followed revealed the extent of government knowledge about these creatures. Court documents, heavily redacted but still revealing, showed that multiple agencies had been aware of Bigfoot populations for decades. Research programs, funded through black budgets and classified operations, had been studying the creature's behavior, intelligence, and potential impact on human society. Margaret Thornfield's legal team, led by prominent civil rights attorney Sarah Chen, filed Freedom of Information Act requests that uncovered decades of classified documents related to anomalous primate encounters in national forests. The documents revealed a systematic program of evidence suppression and witness intimidation that had been ongoing since the 1960s. The classified documents revealed the existence of a joint military-civilian research program codenamed Project Wildman that had been studying these creatures for over 50 years. The program had documented hundreds of encounters, collected extensive biological samples, and even attempted limited communication with the beings. The research had been classified at the highest levels due to concerns about public panic and the potential impact on religious and scientific worldviews. David's life was forever changed by his discovery and the events that followed. He became a reluctant celebrity in the cryptozoology community while remaining a target of government harassment and surveillance. His private investigation business was destroyed by the controversy, but he found new purpose as an advocate for government transparency and the public's right to know about scientific discoveries. The harassment continued even after the footage's release, with David facing ongoing legal challenges, financial difficulties, and personal threats. However, he also received support from unexpected quarters, including former government officials who came forward to confirm the existence of classified programs studying these creatures. The footage that David captured in the forests of Northern California remains some of the most compelling evidence for Bigfoot's existence ever recorded. More importantly, it has opened a window into a hidden world that exists parallel to our own, challenging our assumptions about intelligence, consciousness, and humanity's place in the natural order. The creatures that David documented continue to live in the remote wilderness areas of the Pacific Northwest, protected now not just by their own intelligence and stealth, but by government agencies that seem determined to keep their existence secret. The reasons for this secrecy remain unclear, but the implications are profound. If such remarkable beings can remain hidden in our modern world, what other wonders and mysteries await discovery in the wild places that still exist beyond the reach of civilization? David had worked for 11 years in Yellowstone's backcountry, and his October 15th morning started with reports from experienced backpackers near Cache Creek. They'd heard sounds that didn't match any known animal, deep whooping sounds in call and response patterns. But these were not mating calls, nor territorial warnings. It sounded like an actual language. What Krueger didn't know yet was that his body cam would soon capture proof of exactly what those sounds meant. The Cache Creek was a common Bigfoot habitat, remote enough for privacy and close enough to major trail systems to monitor human activity. If you wanted to disappear for a while, this was the perfect place. At 2:15 p.m., Krueger headed toward the area on foot. The route took him through dense pine forests and natural bottlenecks, exactly the kind of terrain where something smart could stay hidden. If there were Bigfoots here, they'd be able to watch his every step and choose exactly where any encounter would happen. Krueger didn't realize he was walking into a funnel, and his body cam was recording every step. The body cam footage from the first mile shows subtle signs that something unusual was happening. Animal activity was way below normal levels for that season and time of the day. Birds were present, but seemed nervous, with flight patterns that suggested they were deliberately avoiding certain areas of the forest. The big question was why? Why were they avoiding those areas? At 3:47 p.m., Krueger found physical evidence that switched his investigation from checking out weird reports to documenting creatures that weren't supposed to exist. He found footprints, larger than a human. Now these footprints measured 16 inches long and 8 inches wide, measurements that could only be made by something walking upright on two legs while weighing between 600 and 800 pounds. The footprints showed characteristics that were unmistakably consistent with authentic Bigfoot track evidence. 5 distinct toes with clear joint articulation, an opposable thumb arrangement that proved these creatures had hands capable of grasping and manipulating objects, and dermal ridge patterns that showed these definitely weren't fake carvings or misidentified bear prints. What made these tracks especially important was their freshness and the direction they indicated Bigfoot had been traveling. The prints were less than 12 hours old, made during the same time period when campers had reported coordinated vocalizations that suggested multiple Bigfoots were operating as a team in the immediate area. The tracks headed directly toward dense forest cover where intelligent creatures could watch human activity while staying completely hidden. Krueger spent 20 minutes carefully documenting every detail of the footprints, taking measurements and filming them from multiple angles. His body cam captured detailed footage that would later prove crucial when specialists analyzed it. The trail of footprints led directly into elevated terrain. Krueger followed the tracks for about half a mile before losing them on rocky ground that wouldn't hold impressions, but the direction was unmistakable. Whatever had made those prints was moving toward elevated positions that would provide excellent observation points for monitoring human activity in the valley below. The body cam timestamp shows 4:03 p.m. when Krueger made a discovery that revealed just how sophisticated Bigfoot's behavior really was. He found additional footprints that weren't following the same route as the previous tracks, but were paralleling his own path with disturbing precision. These newer tracks stayed about 40 yards to his right, matching his speed and direction perfectly while maintaining distance that kept the Bigfoot just outside normal human detection range. This was absolutely terrifying when you really thought about what it meant. Bigfoot wasn't just randomly traveling through the same area where Krueger happened to be hiking. It was deliberately following him, studying how he moved, staying at surveillance distance that allowed the creature to observe human behavior while remaining completely hidden. The parallel tracks showed that Bigfoot deliberately stepped in locations that minimized ground disturbance and reduced the risk of leaving obvious signs that might alert its human target to the surveillance operation. This level of tactical sophistication demonstrated that these creatures understood human tracking techniques and could counter standard methods used to detect wildlife in forests. On the audio, you could hear it. The woods had gone quiet. At 4:12 p.m., The Bigfoot that had been stalking Krueger revealed itself through vocalizations that demonstrated the sophisticated communication capabilities that made these creatures so remarkable and dangerous. The first call came from the forest to Krueger's right, exactly where the parallel tracks suggested his pursuer was positioned. The vocalization was unlike anything in standard wildlife biology, combining incredible depth and complexity that proved it was intentional communication rather than an instinctive animal response. The sound lasted about 6 seconds. You can hear it clearly on the recording, harmonic variations that suggest actual language capability. 3 minutes later, the vocalization was repeated from a completely different location, proving the creature had moved while maintaining perfect surveillance of Krueger's position. Then a third call came from Krueger's left side, revealing that multiple Bigfoots were now involved in what appeared to be a coordinated operation designed to surround him and control his movement options. These creatures were talking to each other while positioning themselves tactically to maximize their advantage in whatever confrontation they were planning. The Bigfoot calls continued at irregular intervals as the creatures maneuvered through the forest around Krueger's position. The body cam audio picks up each call clearly, immediately answered by others, creating a communication network that allowed real-time coordination of their positioning and adjustments based on how Krueger was moving. At 4:19 p.m., Krueger entered a small clearing where the afternoon sunlight provided perfect conditions for what would become the most detailed visual documentation of Bigfoot appearance and behavior ever recorded. And then, the camera finally captures it in full view. The lead Bigfoot stood about 60 yards ahead, positioned beside a fallen tree, where it had apparently been doing some kind of foraging while maintaining observation of the approaching human. This Bigfoot was absolutely massive, beyond anything Krueger could have imagined possible for any North American creature. Standing fully upright, it was at least 7.5 feet tall, with a body structure that combined human-like proportions with muscle mass that exceeded anything in known animal anatomy. The shoulders were incredibly broad, supporting arms that hung past where the knees would be on a human, ending in hands that showed remarkable size and obvious dexterity. The creature was covered in dark brown hair that hung in thick clumps over visible muscle definition, dense, well-maintained, not the messy coat people usually described. The head combined human and ape features, cone-shaped skull with a pronounced sagittal crest. The face showed intelligence, despite features clearly adapted for a different evolutionary path. The eyes were positioned forward like a predator's. They showed awareness, conscious thought, not instinct. Bigfoot was thinking. For 8 seconds, Krueger watched it forage near the log. The hands manipulated decaying wood with precision, searching for grubs or protein, purposeful, deliberate movements. The body cam captures the exact moment. The Bigfoot turned and made direct eye contact. The eyes were positioned forward like a predator's, locked directly on Krueger with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. They showed awareness, conscious thought, not instinct. The creature wasn't reacting on autopilot like an animal caught off guard. The Bigfoot was thinking, processing, and evaluating the human standing in front of it. Those eyes held calculation and intent that went far beyond anything you'd see in even the most intelligent animals. The moment lasted 2 seconds. Krueger saw it happen in real time. Recognition, assessment, decision. The creature's expression shifted from evaluation to aggression. Lips pulled back, revealing teeth designed for meat, a clear threat display. The roar, captured on audio so clearly you can feel it, was unlike anything in documented wildlife. And the message was unmistakable: leave now or die. Krueger ran. Behind him, the creature didn't panic. It moved with controlled aggression, completely confident it could end the chase whenever it wanted. The Bigfoot covered ground with enormous strides, maintaining perfect balance even on difficult terrain. Each step covered what would take Krueger 3 or 4. You could hear controlled breathing aside from Krueger's tedious breathing, much different from his that was so clear in the audio, but a steady, effortless rhythm. The creature wasn't even trying. It was controlling the chase. During the chase, Krueger heard his pursuer making shorter calls that were immediately answered from other locations throughout the forest. Bigfoot was communicating with the others, coordinating positions, sharing information about his movements and potential escape routes. The forest erupted with answering calls from multiple directions. Krueger wasn't being chased by a single creature, but by a coordinated group positioned to cut off every escape route. The Bigfoot family worked together with tactical sophistication, controlling his movements to ensure the outcome they wanted. 90 seconds in, it became clear that the lead Bigfoot was controlling the distance rather than pursuing at full speed. The sounds would surge closer. Krueger could hear its breathing, its footsteps, then fall back, maintaining psychological pressure without overtaking him. This wasn't normal predatory behavior. This was psychological warfare conducted by something intelligent enough to understand the terror value of controlled intimidation. The pursuit behavior demonstrated intelligence and tactical thinking that went beyond what anyone expected. These beings understood human psychology well enough to maximize fear while maintaining complete control over the encounter. At 4:20 p.m., the psychological intimidation ended. Krueger stumbled over an exposed root and crashed to the forest floor. His body cam recorded the impact and the terrifying speed with which the creature closed the final distance. Before Krueger could even attempt to get up, Bigfoot was on top of him. The camera shakes violently as a massive hand grabbed Krueger's shoulder and flipped him from face down to face up with casual effort that revealed how completely outmatched human strength was against Bigfoot power. The creature could have caused devastating injury, but was choosing to demonstrate dominance instead. Up close, the Bigfoot was even more incredible and terrifying than it had appeared from a distance. The facial features showed unmistakable intelligence despite anatomical adaptations for a completely different evolutionary pathway. The eyes held awareness and evaluation, conscious thought, not instinct. The creature was studying Krueger with what looked like scientific curiosity, while simultaneously asserting physical dominance, leaving no doubt about who controlled the encounter. The creature's breath carried the smell of meat and organic matter, a diet completely outside human experience. When it opened its mouth, the teeth were adapted for crushing and tearing with strength far beyond human capability, designed for prey that would challenge even the largest known predators. When Krueger tried to draw his sidearm, the creature's response made human defenses completely useless. One casual swipe sent the weapon spinning into the underbrush with enough force to bend the metal frame. The movement was so fast that Krueger's eyes couldn't even track it. Bigfoot grabbed both of Krueger's legs and began dragging him across the forest floor. Krueger tried to slow himself by clawing at the ground, but his efforts were useless against the strength that treated his body weight as negligible. After about 20 feet, the creature stopped and positioned itself directly over him in a dominance display that left no doubt about the power hierarchy. This was the moment Krueger was certain he was about to die. Everything about the encounter had demonstrated that human technology, training, and physical capability were meaningless against creatures that combined apex predator strength with intelligence that approached or exceeded human strategic thinking. There was no reasonable expectation he would survive whatever came next. But instead of attacking, the creature released a shorter, sharper vocalization. The body cam catches it all. Within seconds, 2 additional Bigfoots emerged from concealed positions in the surrounding forest. Krueger had been completely surrounded throughout the entire encounter. The coordination required for this positioning demonstrated tactical planning and operational discipline that exceeded anything in known animal social structures. The second Bigfoot was slightly smaller than the first, possibly female, with similar dark brown coloring but less pronounced muscular development and a smaller sagittal ridge that might indicate sexual dimorphism. The third was clearly a juvenile, approximately 4 feet tall, but already showing the robust build that would eventually make it as formidable as the adults. This was a family unit with protective motivations and social bonds that would influence how they managed human contact. The three creatures positioned themselves around Krueger in a triangular formation, demonstrating coordinated tactical thinking. Their positioning prevented escape in any direction, while allowing each creature to maintain visual contact with the others for continued communication. The formation was precisely calculated to maximize control while minimizing the possibility that Krueger could create unexpected complications. The communication between the three Bigfoots was remarkably complex. The vocalizations were subtle and controlled, suggesting language capability that allowed detailed coordination without creating noise that might attract other humans. The creatures were clearly discussing Krueger, his status, his equipment, their intentions for how this would end. All three showed intense interest in Krueger's technology and equipment. The footage shows the juvenile leaning in close, its face filling the frame as it examines the body cam itself with obvious curiosity. Carefully examining his uniform, radio, and body cam with obvious curiosity about human capabilities. The footage also shows the possible female studying his boots and clothing with attention that suggested she was documenting human appearance and equipment for future reference. Their behavior indicated they understood that human technology represented capabilities that could affect future encounters, and that gathering intelligence about it was strategically important for their own security and avoiding detection. Their curiosity was scientific rather than casual. These beings understood cause and effect and were actively learning about human capabilities that might impact their survival and territorial control. The examination continued for approximately 5 minutes as the creatures communicated in their vocal language about whatever conclusions they were drawing about human technology and Krueger's role as a ranger. Their discussion was clearly detailed and analytical, suggesting cognitive capabilities that allowed complex information processing and strategic decision-making about the long-term implications of human contact. The adult male made a final vocalization that seemed to conclude their analysis and communicate their decision. The message was unmistakable, conveyed through posture, vocal tone, and direct eye contact, transcending language and conveying a crystal-clear meaning about territorial ownership and human status within their territory. The message was simple and clear. This territory belongs to us. You exist here only because we allow it. Leave now and do not return, or the next encounter will end differently. The three Bigfoots turned and walked back into the forest, moving silently despite their massive size and the dense undergrowth. Their departure was as controlled and tactical as their approach, demonstrating stealth capabilities that would make them nearly impossible to track unless they chose to reveal themselves. Within seconds, they had vanished completely into terrain that offered limited concealment, proving their knowledge of the environment and movement skills were far superior to anything human tracking could match. Krueger remained motionless on the ground for a full minute after the creatures disappeared, too stunned to process the implications of surviving an encounter that should have ended with his death. Everything about the interaction had demonstrated that these creatures possessed intelligence, tactical capability, and physical dominance that made them the true controllers of wilderness territory humans believed they managed. The Bigfoot family's behavior revealed social structure, communication capabilities, and strategic thinking that challenged every assumption about what kinds of intelligent life existed in North America's wilderness. Their coordination, restraint, and territorial messaging indicated these creatures were far more than the primitive forest dwellers most people imagined. They were intelligent beings with sophisticated understanding of human behavior and the strategic implications of contact between species. Most remarkably, the creatures had chosen to demonstrate their dominance without killing, suggesting decision-making that included consideration of long-term consequences and strategic thinking about human Bigfoot relationships beyond immediate territorial defense. Their message had been delivered with precision that ensured understanding while avoiding escalation that might attract unwanted attention from authorities or military response. The body cam footage of this entire encounter would provide unprecedented documentation of Bigfoot intelligence, behavior, and capabilities that challenged everything mainstream science believed about primate evolution and cognitive development. The 3 hours and 43 minutes of high-definition video and audio represented the most comprehensive evidence ever recorded of creatures whose existence had implications extending into questions of national security and human dominance over North American wilderness. The footage documented creatures that possessed tactical coordination, sophisticated communication, advanced problem-solving, and social structure, indicating intelligence approaching or potentially exceeding human cognitive capability in wilderness survival and territorial management. Most significantly, it provided evidence that these beings had been studying human behavior for extended periods, learning operational protocols, and developing strategic approaches to contact that allowed them to maintain complete control over when and how encounters occurred. What made this footage remarkable was how it revealed Bigfoot intelligence operating on multiple levels simultaneously. These creatures were conducting surveillance, coordinating family activities, assessing human technology, making tactical decisions about threats, and communicating complex information between individuals, all while managing a contact situation that required split-second adjustments. The family demonstrated understanding of human psychology that allowed them to maximize intimidation while controlling escalation, knowledge of forest ecosystems that gave them complete tactical advantage, and decision-making that weighed long-term strategic considerations against immediate territorial defense. These were not primitive creatures responding to instinct. These were intelligent beings making calculated decisions about how to manage their relationship with a species they recognized as technologically advanced but physically inferior. Ranger David Krueger's body cam footage proves that North America's wilderness areas are home to creatures whose intelligence and capabilities pose a fundamental challenge to human assumptions about which species actually control these environments and what kinds of encounters might be possible when humans venture into territory these beings consider their own. The implications extend beyond proving Bigfoots exist. It demonstrates that these creatures have successfully managed human contact for decades or centuries, revealing themselves only when it serves their objectives, while maintaining security that has kept their true capabilities hidden from scientific investigation. Dr. Hartwell had established her research camp 8 miles from the nearest trailhead in terrain. Her equipment setup included 12 military-grade trail cameras positioned throughout a 2-square-mile area, each capable of detecting heat signatures from over 100 yards away. The location was chosen specifically for its isolation from human activity, providing perfect conditions for observing natural wildlife behavior without interference. What she didn't realize was that her presence had already been detected by something. Bigfoot's first contact was a vocalization. The sound erupted from the darkness surrounding her camp on the evening of August 18th, a low, guttural call that seemed to originate from multiple directions simultaneously. The vocalization lasted 8 seconds and exhibited a resonant quality that suggested vocal folds far larger than those of any documented mammal. What made the sound truly disturbing was its conversational tone, as if the creature were announcing its presence somehow. Bigfoot wasn't simply marking territory or expressing aggression. It was communicating with intelligence that approached human levels while remaining distinctly non-human in its execution. The forest fell completely silent after the call, but this was just for a while. Audio analysis would later reveal that Bigfoot's vocalizations contained frequencies that could travel for miles through mountain terrain, allowing communication across vast distances without alerting prey species to the creature's exact location. The creature's first physical evidence appeared the following morning in the form of massive footprints circling Dr. Hartwell's campsite. The tracks measured 17 inches long and 7 inches wide, showing anatomical details that placed them outside any known species classification. 5 distinct toe impressions were visible, including what appeared to be an opposable thumb, while the depth of the prints suggested something weighing at least 600 pounds had made them during the night. Bigfoot's foot structure revealed adaptations that were perfectly suited for life in dense forest environments. Most significantly, the dermal ridges visible in the clearest prints showed characteristics that were neither human nor ape, but something entirely unique. Bigfoot had approached Dr. Hartwell's camp from multiple angles, studying her setup and identifying potential escape routes while maintaining perfect stealth. The tracks showed it had come within 15 feet of her tent, close enough to observe her sleeping form through the fabric before retreating into the forest without making a sound that might wake her. The creature's approach pattern demonstrated understanding of human behavior and defensive capabilities that could only have been learned through extensive observation of human activity. Bigfoot had identified the most vulnerable points in the camp's perimeter and had tested Dr. Hartwell's awareness levels by approaching from different directions throughout the night. This was reconnaissance behavior that indicated military-level tactical thinking. The second night brought escalation in the creature's stalking behavior that demonstrated coordinated intelligence beyond anything documented in cryptid research. Multiple vocalizations erupted around Dr. Hartwell's camp at 2:30 a.m., coming from different locations in a pattern that suggested either several Bigfoot working together or one creature moving with supernatural stealth through the mountain terrain. The coordinated nature of the calls indicated social structure and communication protocols that had evolved over thousands of generations. Each vocalization seemed to serve a specific purpose. Some were clearly positional reports, others appeared to be tactical updates, and still others carried emotional content that suggested the creatures were capable of complex social interactions. Bigfoot were not solitary animals, but members of a sophisticated society that had remained hidden from human detection for centuries. Between the calls, heavy footsteps circled the campsite in a deliberate pattern that revealed the creature's understanding of psychological warfare. Bigfoot was applying pressure without direct confrontation, testing Dr. Hartwell's responses and building fear through sustained presence rather than immediate attack. The palm structure suggested grip strength that could crush bone, while the fingertip patterns showed sensitivity that would allow for delicate manipulation of small objects. The creature had demonstrated remarkable restraint and intelligence by carefully lowering the food cache, examining its contents, and returning it to its original position without taking anything. This behavior indicated Bigfoot understood human food storage methods and possessed the manual dexterity to manipulate complex rope systems. More importantly, it showed the creature was studying human behavior rather than simply seeking easy food sources. The rope manipulation required understanding of mechanical advantage and not systems that suggested tool use capabilities far beyond any known primate. Bigfoot had solved the puzzle of the suspended cache without damaging the equipment, demonstrating problem-solving skills that indicated abstract thinking and planning abilities. The creature was capable of understanding cause and effect relationships and applying that knowledge to achieve specific objectives. The creature's message was unmistakable. It could access anything in the camp at any time, but was choosing to observe rather than attack. This level of strategic thinking and self-control indicated intelligence that approached human levels while remaining distinctly alien in its application. Bigfoot was conducting its own research on the human intruder in its territory, gathering information about human capabilities and intentions. This was hunting behavior that indicated intelligence far beyond simple predatory instinct. The creature was studying human psychology and using fear as a tool for control. The footsteps showed remarkable coordination and timing, with the creature maintaining perfect distance from the camp while varying its approach angles to prevent Dr. Hartwell from predicting its location. Bigfoot was demonstrating its ability to maintain surveillance while remaining undetected, a skill that required understanding of human sensory limitations and tactical awareness that approached military training levels. The creature's vocalizations showed complex tonal variations that suggested structured communication. Audio analysis would later reveal harmonic frequencies and rhythmic patterns that didn't match any known North American wildlife, with characteristics that indicated Bigfoot was capable of conveying detailed information through sound alone. The calls seemed designed to coordinate movement and share tactical information about the human target. The vocal patterns also revealed emotional content that suggested the creatures were capable of complex feelings and social bonds. Some calls carried what appeared to be concern or curiosity, while others showed clear territorial assertion and dominance displays. Bigfoot were not mindless beasts, but thinking beings with rich emotional lives and sophisticated social structures. Dawn revealed the full extent of the creature's capabilities. Massive handprints were pressed into the bark of a pine tree beside Dr. Hartwell's food cache, which had been suspended 15 feet above ground, according to standard bear safety protocols. The handprint showed 5 fingers with clear opposable thumbs, and the reach required to touch the cache indicated something standing at least 8 feet tall with arm span that exceeded human proportions. Bigfoot's hand structure revealed evolutionary adaptations that were perfectly suited for forest life. The fingers showed remarkable length and dexterity, with joint articulation that indicated the ability to manipulate complex objects and use tools. The third night brought the most sophisticated display of Bigfoot behavior ever documented. The creature's vocalizations began at 11:47 p.m., but were accompanied by rhythmic tree knocking that echoed through the valley in coordinated patterns. The impacts came from at least 3 different locations, suggesting multiple Bigfoot communicating through wood percussion in a language that had evolved over millennia. The tree knocking demonstrated tool use and environmental manipulation that placed Bigfoot intelligence far above simple primate behavior. The creatures were using the forest itself as a communication network, sending messages across vast distances through acoustic signals that could convey complex tactical information. The coordination required for such communication indicated social structure and cultural development that challenged every assumption about cryptid capabilities. Each impact was precisely timed and positioned to create specific acoustic effects that could carry different types of information. Bigfoot were using variations in rhythm, intensity, and location to create a sophisticated communication system that took advantage of the mountain terrain's acoustic properties. This was technology that had been developed over thousands of years of evolution in forest environments. The tree knocking also served as psychological warfare, creating an atmosphere of being surrounded and outnumbered that was designed to increase stress and reduce rational thinking in the human target. Bigfoot understood that fear could be used as a weapon, and they were applying psychological pressure with the same precision they used for physical stalking. At 1:15 a.m., the lead Bigfoot approached Dr. Hartwell's tent with deliberate stealth that showcased its predatory expertise. The creature's breathing was audible through the fabric, heavy and measured, indicating something with lung capacity far exceeding human norms. The respiratory pattern suggested a cardiovascular system that was adapted for sustained physical activity at high altitude, with oxygen processing efficiency that allowed for extended periods of intense exertion. When the creature pressed against the tent wall, the massive hand that splayed across the fabric was easily twice the size of a human hand, with fingers that showed remarkable dexterity and control. The pressure was carefully modulated to avoid tearing the fabric while still conveying the creature's immense strength and reach. Bigfoot was demonstrating its physical capabilities while showing restraint that indicated sophisticated understanding of human fragility. The creature's touch was exploratory rather than aggressive, demonstrating curiosity about human shelter construction and the vulnerable being inside. Bigfoot was conducting a physical examination of its target, learning about human defensive capabilities while demonstrating its ability to reach Dr. Hartwell at any moment. The psychological impact was devastating. The creature was establishing dominance through proximity rather than violence. The hand movements showed remarkable sensitivity and control, with the creature apparently able to feel Dr. Hartwell's heartbeat and breathing through the tent fabric. Bigfoot was gathering physiological information about human stress responses and fear reactions, adding to its understanding of human psychology and behavior patterns. This was scientific observation being conducted by a non-human intelligence. The pressure against the tent lasted 90 seconds, during which Bigfoot seemed to be processing information about human scent, body heat, and fear responses. When it finally withdrew, the creature moved with perfect silence despite its massive size, demonstrating stealth capabilities that allowed it to appear and disappear like a ghost in the mountain wilderness. Bigfoot's movement skills were so advanced that it could control every aspect of its interaction with the environment. Bigfoot's approach to the creek revealed systematic behavior patterns that suggested this was regular territory maintenance rather than random wandering. The creature followed specific paths through the forest that had been established over years of use, with route selection that minimized exposure while maximizing efficiency. Bigfoot's movement patterns showed understanding of terrain advantages and tactical positioning that indicated military-level strategic thinking. The creature's behavior at the creek revealed routine patterns that suggested this was regular territory rather than a chance encounter. Bigfoot approached the water with obvious familiarity, scanning the surroundings with systematic precision before crouching to drink. Its movements were economical and purposeful, indicating intelligence that planned each action for maximum efficiency and minimum exposure. The drinking behavior itself revealed physiological adaptations that were perfectly suited for wilderness survival. The creature's mouth and throat structure allowed for rapid water consumption while maintaining alertness for potential threats. Bigfoot could process large quantities of water quickly while keeping its head positioned for immediate response to danger, demonstrating evolutionary refinements that had been perfected over millions of years. Most significantly, the creature's posture and alertness suggested it was aware of the camera's presence, but had chosen to allow itself to be recorded. Bigfoot was controlling the documentation process, revealing itself only when and how it chose, rather than being caught unaware. This level of technological awareness indicated the creature had been observing human activity for extended periods and understood the purpose of recording equipment. The creature's decision to allow documentation suggested a deliberate choice to make contact with human researchers under controlled conditions. Bigfoot was managing the encounter to ensure its own safety while providing evidence of its existence to the scientific community. This indicated long-term strategic thinking and understanding of human social structures that went far beyond simple animal intelligence. The creature's decision to relocate closer to the creek on August 22nd demonstrated tactical adaptation that proved its intelligence was actively processing Dr. Hartwell's behavior. Bigfoot recognized that she was preparing for closer observation and adjusted its own strategy accordingly. Rather than avoiding the area, it chose to use her expectations against her, turning her research setup into an opportunity for controlled contact. The relocation also revealed the creature's understanding of human technology and research methods. Bigfoot had observed Dr. Hartwell's camera placement and equipment setup, understanding that she was attempting to document its presence. Instead of avoiding the surveillance, the creature chose to use it for its own purposes, demonstrating intelligence that could adapt human tools to achieve its own objectives. The forest's unnatural silence on the final day indicated Bigfoot's presence was affecting the entire ecosystem. Birds, insects, and small mammals had fled the area, recognizing the apex predator's dominance over their territory. The creature's influence extended far beyond its physical presence, creating a zone of control that encompassed several square miles of wilderness. The ecosystem's response to Bigfoot's presence revealed the creature's position at the top of the forest food chain. Every other species recognized its dominance and adjusted their behavior accordingly, creating a buffer zone around the creature's territory that ensured privacy for the final encounter. Bigfoot's ecological impact demonstrated its role as a keystone species that shaped the behavior of entire forest communities. As darkness fell on August 22nd, Bigfoot began its approach to the creek, with deliberate timing that suggested it had been monitoring Dr. Hartwell's position throughout the day. The creature's footsteps were audible from a distance, indicating it was no longer concerned with stealth, but was instead announcing its arrival for the final encounter. The psychological impact was carefully calculated to build anticipation and ensure Dr. Hartwell was prepared to document what was about to occur. The creature's approach pattern revealed confidence and control that indicated it was operating entirely on its own terms. Bigfoot had spent 5 days studying its human observer and had concluded that she posed no threat to its safety or territory. The final approach was a demonstration of trust and perhaps respect for Dr. Hartwell's persistence and courage in remaining in the wilderness despite obvious danger. At 8:41 p.m., Bigfoot emerged from the tree line, revealing itself in unprecedented detail. The creature stood 7.5 feet tall, with shoulders that were impossibly broad and arms that hung past its knees. Its entire body was covered in dark reddish-brown hair that showed natural variation and movement, proving this was living tissue rather than any artificial construction. The creature's hair showed seasonal adaptations and environmental conditioning that indicated a lifetime spent in mountain wilderness. The coat was thick and weather-resistant, with natural oils that provided protection against moisture and temperature extremes. The hair patterns showed wear marks from movement through dense vegetation, proving this was a wild animal that had never been in captivity or human contact. Bigfoot's head was conical with a prominent sagittal crest that indicated massive jaw muscles capable of crushing bone. Its face blended human and ape characteristics in ways that defied classification, with a flat nose, prominent brow ridge, and eyes that held unmistakable intelligence. The creature's facial structure suggested evolutionary adaptations that were perfectly suited for life in dense forest environments. The sagittal crest revealed muscle attachment points that indicated bite force far exceeding any known primate, while the jaw structure suggested the ability to process a wide variety of food sources. Bigfoot's dental adaptations allowed for both meat consumption and plant processing, indicating an omnivorous diet that could adapt to seasonal food availability in mountain environments. The creature's gaze was alert and calculating, constantly scanning the environment with predatory awareness that missed nothing. The eyes showed intelligence that transcended simple animal consciousness, with focus and attention that indicated active thinking and decision-making processes. Bigfoot was not operating on instinct alone, but was actively analyzing the situation and planning its responses. The creature's movement patterns revealed perfect adaptation for forest environments. Its gait was fluid and compliant, with knees slightly bent and weight rolling from heel to toe in a motion no human could replicate comfortably. Every step was placed with precision that avoided disturbing loose rocks or breaking branches, demonstrating stealth capabilities that had been refined over millions of years of evolution. Bigfoot's locomotion showed remarkable efficiency and grace despite its massive size. The creature could move through dense forest without creating noise or disturbance, indicating muscle control and coordination that exceeded any known primate capabilities. The movement patterns suggested the ability to switch between different gaits depending on terrain and tactical requirements. The creature's behavior was natural and unhurried, suggesting this was routine territory maintenance rather than a special event. Its massive hands showed remarkable dexterity as it cupped water, with opposable thumbs that indicated tool use capabilities far beyond any known primate. The drinking behavior revealed physiological adaptations that were perfectly suited for wilderness survival. The creature's mouth and throat structure allowed for efficient water consumption while maintaining alertness for potential threats. Bigfoot could process water quickly while keeping its senses focused on environmental monitoring, demonstrating evolutionary refinements that had been perfected over millions of years. The creature's hands showed evolutionary adaptations that were perfectly suited for forest life. The fingers displayed remarkable length and dexterity, with joint articulation that indicated the ability to manipulate complex objects and use tools. The palm structure suggested grip strength that could crush bone, while the fingertip patterns showed sensitivity that would allow for delicate manipulation of small objects. The creature's intelligence was evident in every movement and gesture. It paused frequently to scan the forest with systematic precision, its head turning in patterns that indicated tactical awareness of potential threats from multiple directions. Bigfoot's eyes reflected the camera's infrared light with an amber-green glow that seemed to pierce directly through the darkness to Dr. Hartwell's hiding place. The scanning behavior revealed understanding of environmental threats and tactical positioning that indicated military-level awareness. The creature's head movements followed patterns that ensured complete coverage of potential approach routes while maintaining focus on the primary task of drinking. Bigfoot was capable of multitasking at levels that exceeded human capabilities. At one point, the creature looked directly toward the camera position with an expression that was unmistakably aware and curious. Bigfoot knew it was being recorded and had known throughout the entire encounter, but it had chosen to reveal itself on its own terms rather than being discovered accidentally. This level of control over the documentation process indicated intelligence that approached human levels while remaining distinctly alien in its application. The direct gaze revealed eyes that held ancient wisdom and intelligence that had been observing human activity for generations. The creature's expression showed curiosity about the human observer, but no fear or aggression, suggesting confidence in its own abilities and understanding of the situation. Bigfoot was making a conscious choice to allow documentation of its existence. The creature's facial features were clearly visible in profile as it drank, showing bone structure that was massive and robust, designed to support tremendous muscle mass while maintaining the flexibility required for complex facial expressions. Bigfoot's eyes held an awareness that transcended simple animal consciousness, suggesting cognitive capabilities that challenged every assumption about non-human intelligence. The facial structure revealed evolutionary adaptations that were perfectly suited for communication and social interaction. The creature's expressions showed emotional range and complexity that indicated rich inner life and sophisticated social bonds. Bigfoot was not a mindless beast, but a thinking being with complex thoughts and feelings. When the creature finished drinking, it stood slowly and turned to face Dr. Hartwell's position directly, acknowledging her presence with a gaze that was neither hostile nor friendly, but simply aware. For a moment that lasted an eternity, the ancient intelligence behind those amber eyes studied the human who had been trying so desperately to document its existence, perhaps evaluating whether she was worthy of this unprecedented revelation. The final exchange between human and Bigfoot represented a moment of contact between two intelligent species that had shared the continent for thousands of years without official recognition. The creature's acknowledgement of Dr. Hartwell's presence suggested respect for her persistence and courage, while also serving as a warning that future encounters would be entirely on Bigfoot's terms. Then, without haste or concern, Bigfoot turned and walked back into the forest, its massive form disappearing into the darkness with the same supernatural stealth it had demonstrated throughout the 5-day encounter. The creature had accomplished its objective, allowing itself to be documented clearly enough to prove its existence while maintaining complete control over the terms of contact, leaving behind 58 seconds of footage that would change cryptozoology forever. The clip lasted 18 seconds. At first, it showed only static night vision grain, the faint hiss of wind, and a campfire's reflected glow across a plastic tarp. Then, from beyond the creek, a broad, upright shape crossed the frame. Its movements were slow and deliberate, partially obscured by drifting fog, before it turned and disappeared behind a ridge. A heartbeat later, the recording cut to black. Initial reactions were muted, but re-uploads began spreading across Reddit and YouTube within hours. A pattern soon formed in how people labeled the reposts, each one hinting at survival and encounter rather than simple observation. By the next evening, thousands had watched the clip, yet Ellison himself could not be reached. The silence where his voice should have been grew louder with each unanswered call. Mark Ellison, 50, was a former fire tower ranger who spent 2 decades across the Olympic Peninsula. Known for his precision, he logged every route and weather shift except, perhaps, the one that mattered most. He lived alone near Forks, where the forest pressed close to his property. After leaving his post, he ran a small channel focused on camping safety and wildlife behavior, field notes more than entertainment. He ignored the folklore around him, documenting only what could be measured. The device he used on his final trip was a compact infrared trail camera that automatically sent every recording to off-site storage. Early March 2024 brought steady rain to the upper Sol Duc drainage. Rain carried the smell of iron from wet bark. Mark Ellison had planned a 3-day trip to test a hybrid solar battery trail camera under dense canopy. He drove from his home in Forks and parked off Highway 101 near Fairholme before hiking in on foot. His plan was simple: set 2 cameras at separate clearings, then return once the data uploaded. Each note he recorded felt routine until it didn't. GPS tracker and voice recordings showed a routine trip. He checked in at precise intervals, 3:12 p.m., noting barometric pressure, 5:40 p.m., mentioning drizzle. He reached camp before sunset, near a tributary of the Sol Duc River. On day 2, he moved between camera sites, covering nearly 5 miles before returning to camp by late afternoon. His last coordinates placed him a quarter mile from his tent. At 7:52 that evening, Ellison sent a voice note about rising wind and plans to leave early. The message uploaded, then the connection dropped. No further transmissions came after 8 p.m. At 8:41 p.m., his trail camera detected motion. It recorded 18 seconds of night vision footage before uploading to the cloud, the same clip showing a tall shape near the riverbank. Despite the valley's notoriously weak service, short bursts of connection often occurred along ridgelines, which could explain how the file transmitted successfully. Yet the file was perfect, too perfect. The successful upload confirmed equipment was functioning, yet nothing followed. The cameras stayed silent through the night. If the camera was alive, something else in the valley was too. When Ellison failed to return, his sister reported him overdue on March 14th. She had assumed he'd extended the trip because of persistent rain and poor road conditions, but after several unanswered messages, she contacted authorities. Search teams later found his vehicle locked at the trailhead. Teams advanced along the drainage using standard search grids. Near his camp, they found the tent intact, sleeping bag rolled, and cooking gear neatly stacked. His backpack rested under the tarp with 1 day's rations left. The radio was powered off, its batteries removed. Only his phone was missing. The charger remained coiled beside a full battery pack, suggesting he'd taken it with him before vanishing into the forest. A recovered set of boot impressions led away from camp for roughly 40 yards before blending into a patch of wet moss where tracking became unreliable. The path ran parallel to the stream in the same direction as the camera's recorded footage. Was he following something or being led? Searchers found no signs of struggle, no animal traces, and no evidence of sudden runoff or slope collapse. Technicians found Ellison's GPS trail ended abruptly at 8:02 p.m., less than 40 minutes before his camera recorded motion. Investigators blamed either drained batteries or a signal drop in rough terrain. His smartwatch kept transmitting 40 minutes longer, logging movement after the tracker went dark. 2 devices, 2 endpoints, no clear link. The footage drew attention only after his family shared his details online, connecting his name to the viral clip. Search teams expanded their radius but found nothing new. Rain erased traces. Only his gear and a field notebook remained. The last entry dated March 3rd, stopping mid-sentence, pen lifted mid-stroke. Frame-by-frame playback revealed more detail. The object's outline extended nearly 7 feet above ground level when scaled against visible branches. The infrared exposure, usually harsh on warm objects, registered the figure several degrees cooler than its surroundings. That single anomaly became the focus of countless breakdowns. Under normal conditions, a living subject moving through cold air would appear warmer on infrared. The inverse pattern suggested heavy insulation, either natural or layered, capable of masking body heat. But what kind of insulation makes something colder than the forest itself? Colorized conversions circulated across multiple forums, each exaggerating contrast in different ways. One enhanced frame showed a faint reflection on the lower left, 2 consecutive frames in which a smaller irregular shape appeared. Some called it a sensor echo or a lens reflection from fog droplets, while others saw the hint of another crouched figure. No one could agree on the scale, and no one could explain why it moved when nothing else did. Professionals with backgrounds in drone and wildlife imaging weighed in. A group of remote sensing students from Oregon State University attempted to reconstruct the camera's parameters based on the embedded EXIF metadata. Coordinates placed the scene on the south side of the Salt Duke River, roughly 2 miles from the nearest service road. Temperature metadata suggested ambient conditions near 43 degrees Fahrenheit, consistent with Ellison's earlier logs. The camera angle matched one of the test positions Ellison had described to fellow hobbyists weeks earlier. In a comment preserved through cached archives, he mentioned a spot overlooking a narrow stream bend with enough open ground to track deer movement. That detail aligned with the topography visible in the clip, a sloping bank descending into a shallow channel bordered by alder and cedar. He'd mapped it himself. He'd walked that ground before. So why did it look different through the lens? What puzzled analysts was the clean upload timestamp. The file's creation and transfer times showed no signs of delay or corruption. If the device had malfunctioned or been damaged, the upload would have stalled or produced a partial file. Instead, the connection remained steady for the full duration, meaning the camera completed its data queue without interruption. Perfect transmission from a valley known for dead zones. Technicians studying the pixel patterns noticed a faint flicker in the upper right quadrant between frames 241 and 245, less than a quarter of a second in real time. When brightness levels were equalized, a diffused light signature appeared, consistent with a brief reflection from a wet surface or metallic object. It moved counter to the camera's natural light gradient, suggesting an independent source of reflection rather than random interference. Something had caught light where no light should have been. Theories diverged. One camp claimed it was a visual echo from the moving figure. Another insisted it was the partial outline of a second body entering the periphery. A third argued for atmospheric distortion common in humid forest air when illuminated by infrared. No theory could fully explain why the reflected area appeared cooler than both background and subject, reversing expected thermal hierarchy. Independent field photographers recreated similar setups using identical hardware. Most achieved plausible silhouettes using heavy clothing or insulated suits, yet none could replicate the precise temperature inversion shown in the file. The simulated subjects always registered warmer than the forest floor, even when soaked or coated with mud. To match the readings, an object would need either a heat-reflective surface or extremely low core temperature inconsistent with a living human, or it would need to have been there so long it had become part of the cold itself. Satellite imagery confirmed that the area around the recorded coordinates contained deep canopy and water channels known for producing cold air pockets. In such zones, temperature gradients could shift abruptly over short distances. Analysts tried mapping air density changes to explain the flickering outlines, yet the footage's stability argued against wind interference. Every tree in the frame held still. Only the moving figure showed motion distortion, as if everything else knew to stay frozen. As online interest grew, various users claimed to possess clearer copies. Most were filtered versions of the same source, compressed and re-uploaded under misleading titles. The original remained on a cloud server associated with Ellison's account until it was mirrored by multiple websites. A retired wildlife biologist from the Pacific Northwest Research Station reviewed the clip at normal speed and noted proportion ratios unusual for any known animal. The limb length appeared human, but the forward pitch of the torso and restricted arm swing suggested limited shoulder rotation, a trait found in large quadrupeds when forced upright. Combined with the even pacing and apparent mass, the profile did not match typical human gait. It walked like something learning how. Forums filled with motion tracking overlays. Volunteers marked joint points and stride intervals. The results varied, but shared one oddity. the stride distance measured consistently longer than that of an average adult male. The figure's head never turned toward the camera, despite the obvious illumination shift when it crossed the clearing. It moved as if aware of the light source, but indifferent to it, or as if it had done this before. A few users highlighted the final 3 frames where the shape began to descend behind a slope. The camera registered a brief drop in ambient contrast, followed by a pulse of interference resembling static. Some mistook it for a system error, but file diagnostics confirmed intentional cutoff. The device terminated recording precisely at the standard 18-second mark, meaning the motion trigger had completed its cycle rather than failed. It ended exactly when it was supposed to. Nothing malfunctioned, nothing broke. It simply stopped watching. When investigators later cross-checked the metadata with official survey maps, the coordinates aligned with a ridge overlooking a narrow tributary of the Sol Duc River. The distance to the nearest access point measured just over 2 miles, accessible only by foot and far from campsites. Despite meticulous analysis, no consensus emerged. To some, the video showed a hoax performed with precision equipment. To others, it was a rare example of an unknown presence moving through one of the most isolated valleys in the region. The only certainty came from the data itself. The camera functioned exactly as designed, recorded at stable temperature and time, and transmitted the file without error. But certainty isn't the same as truth. By the second week after the leak, breakdown threads dominated discussion boards. Digital forensics groups produced papers describing possible causes, ranging from double exposure to sensor misread. Yet each hypothesis left one constant unexplained: the secondary reflection that appeared in those 2 brief frames. It was there, unmistakable, yet no one could say what it was or why it moved opposite the main subject. Some things defy focus no matter how many times you replay them. When search teams reached the coordinates tied to the footage, the clearing matched every contour visible in the clip. The slope, the stream bend, even the distinctive split trunk on the left side of the frame, all present. But the primary trail camera that had recorded the event was gone. Only its nylon mounting strap and a length of solar wire remained, both ends frayed but not cut. The ground beneath the tree showed no signs of struggle, only a compressed patch of soil where the camera housing should have rested. Something had taken it gently. 200 yards from the site, Ellison's backup camera remained active. It captured no visuals, only 8 seconds of heavy impacts, a low hum, then static at 8:42 p.m., 1 minute after the main clip. Analysts noted an electromagnetic-type spike, as if something nearby generated interference. His vehicle sat untouched at the Fairholme trailhead, keys gone but supplies intact. Hours after the footage spread, forensic users discovered a second save at 9:03 p.m., over 20 minutes after all devices went dark. Service in the valley was poor, yet deliberate access was clear. The file had been reopened. The question was, by whom? This discrepancy became the first tangible contradiction in the case. If Ellison had left camp before 8 p.m. and the footage auto-uploaded at 8:41, who interacted with the file at 9:03? Investigators tested the hypothesis of an automated server sync, but logs from the manufacturer's database showed no queued retries or firmware updates at that time. Whatever process modified the file had occurred locally, not through routine background operations. Further inspection revealed that the 903 record shared the same checksum as the original, ruling out content alteration. The change involved metadata only, consistent with a resave command triggered when a user previews or reopens the file, as if someone had been reviewing what they just recorded. That small gap, 22 minutes between upload and modification, became the focal point for both official investigators and online sleuths. Some analysts noted that minor server clock drift or timestamp desynchronization could technically account for the discrepancy, though the lack of corresponding network activity kept the anomaly under scrutiny. Searchers on the ground had found no footprints beyond the creek, no equipment suggesting Ellison retrieved the camera himself, and no evidence of wildlife interference capable of pressing buttons or powering devices. Yet the file's behavior implied human interaction, or something that understood how humans interact. Forums began speculating that someone else had been in the area, possibly another hiker or a passerby who found the camera and triggered a manual upload while checking its contents. But weather records showed heavy rain moving through the region that night, reducing visibility and making travel off established routes unlikely. Rangers also confirmed no other camping permits had been issued within a 5-mile radius during that period. No one else should have been there. So who touched the camera at 9:03? 3 nights after the original clip spread, a second version surfaced on a small video mirror under an unverified account. The username matched none of Ellison's, yet the description claimed it was a restored copy from the trail camera's SD card. Uploaded just after midnight on March 14th, between official searches and the final volunteer sweep, it seemed deliberately timed. The checksum differed slightly, indicating a new encode. This version ran 5 seconds longer. Amid static and interference, a faint shape appeared, elongated, bent, dragging something downslope. The feed ended in a smear of noise and blackout. 5 seconds that changed everything. Video forensic groups analyzed the new clip and found no edits. Only breaks typical of an interrupted upload resumed under weak signal. The file acted as if a frozen transfer had later continued from cached data, suggesting the added segment always existed but failed to send the first time. The camera had seen more than anyone realized. Its block-based system could store incomplete frames for later upload, yet no one could explain how those missing packets resurfaced 3 days later, or who held the physical card needed to retrieve them. By then, search teams had confirmed one fact: the primary camera was gone. Compression analysis deepened the puzzle. The static at the start of the added sequence displayed a symmetrical frequency band, evidence of re-encoding, not external noise. Experts described it as a signature left when damaged frames are rebuilt by automated correction software. The recovered images were cleaner than they should have been, almost too intact for a device that had supposedly gone offline. Someone had worked to restore them. But why? Viewers who enhanced the footage noticed a series of faint flickers along the right edge, forming a repeating pattern consistent with a swinging light source. When motion tracked, the rhythm aligned closely with a bipedal gait, alternating at just under 2 strides per second. The dragging form appeared attached or pulled, its heat signature fading unevenly as the larger shape moved downslope. Something was being carried or taken. Timing comparisons soon connected the recovered segment to another dataset, Ellison's smartwatch telemetry extracted from cloud backup. His device had been configured to sync periodically through a low-bandwidth satellite relay, preserving minute-level heart rate logs even after local signal loss. The data showed a sudden elevation at 8:44 p.m., climbing rapidly for less than 2 minutes before flatlining at 8:46. The moment of peak signal loss overlapped exactly with the extended portion of the new video. His heart had stopped at the exact moment the extra footage ended. To investigators, the correlation was circumstantial, but for online researchers, it became a turning point. The idea that the extra footage aligned with Ellison's last recorded heartbeat implied both events were captured within the same minute. The footage didn't just show what happened, it showed when he stopped running. Within 24 hours of its posting, the second file was removed from the original site for privacy concerns, but duplicates spread immediately across mirror channels. Each re-upload introduced new compression errors, yet the defining sequence, the faint figure dragging weight behind the ridge, remained visible enough to sustain argument. Whether it depicted corrupted pixels or something tangible, its timing and method of appearance transformed the case from an isolated disappearance into a digital mystery. The recovery team moved through the Sol Duke drainage with handheld thermal scanners, mapping every contour of the floodplain. On the 6th day, near a narrowing of the creek, they found an object half buried in mud beneath a fallen branch. It was Ellison's smartwatch, screen cracked, band torn, but GPS module intact. Data extracted from the watch showed a sudden burst of motion beginning at 8:43 p.m., with his heart rate spiking at 8:44 as he covered roughly 200 feet in under a minute before signals stopped. The elevation graph indicated a brief incline, then descent toward the water. Analysts estimated that he had covered the distance in less than 40 seconds before the signal flatlined. 40 seconds of speed, then nothing. Around the same area, investigators documented two sets of impressions in the soft soil. One matched standard hiking boots consistent with Ellison's model, size 11. The other appeared parallel, larger, broader, and bare. The second track measured nearly 14 inches from heel to toe, but the shape was uneven, with pressure points unlike a human arch. The prints extended for 3 paces before fading where the mud thinned near gravel. Wildlife biologists from the Department of Fish and Wildlife later examined plaster casts and noted that a bear could produce similar depth under rearing posture. But the stride length, over 5 feet, did not match known locomotion patterns. Biologists noted that while bears can rear briefly, sustained pacing at that stride length was improbable. The impressions showed neither a full quadrupedal gait nor a consistent upright stance, but something intermediate, something that walked beside him, matching him step for step. Despite growing speculation, law enforcement issued no public statements. Search logs made no mention of recovering the missing SD card. Officially, the investigation categorized all unrecovered equipment as having undetermined disposition. By mid-March, the internet divided into factions. One group advanced what they called the human theory, the belief that Ellison's disappearance resulted from a staged scare gone wrong. They argued that another camper or filmmaker had planned a viral prank, misjudged conditions, and triggered a real emergency. But if it was staged, why did the footprints continue past the frame? Opposing them were proponents of the biological theory who treated the event as an authentic encounter with an unidentified species. They cited the temperature inversions in the original file and the stride spacing at the creek as evidence of a large biped adapted for stealth in cold environments. And no one could say who moved the file at 9:03. A third camp, labeled by moderators as the staged upload theory, took a different approach. They suggested that Ellison himself had captured legitimate wildlife footage, but someone else later manipulated or recontextualized it. The 9:03 p.m. modification, they claimed, marked an external actor accessing his account after the fact. These competing narratives generated a wave of open-source data projects. One group of independent analysts pulled IP logs from Mirror archives and discovered an address embedded in the header of the second upload. The IP traced not to Washington, but to a satellite modem registered in Idaho. When cross-referenced with commercial leasing databases, the modem's serial number appeared in a rental invoice issued to a forestry contractor operating in Olympic National Forest earlier that year. The company had returned the unit in January, weeks before Ellison's trip, a recycled connection from equipment that shouldn't have been active. But it was. That discovery reignited claims that someone with professional field access had handled the footage after his disappearance. Digital forensics experts reviewing the trail camera's communication protocol agreed that a remote connection could have initiated upload from any device paired to its cloud credentials. It was plausible, though improbable, that a technician testing residual logins from a recycled modem could have triggered a resync without knowing its content, or someone knew exactly what they were looking for. While online debates deepened, a new development surfaced in late March. A regional newspaper received an anonymous message from someone claiming to possess unlisted footage from the same night. The sender described being a drone hobbyist testing night sensors several miles south of the Salt Duke drainage. Attached metadata placed the flight path within overlapping airspace at 8:44 p.m., 2 minutes before Ellison's smartwatch signal ended. When the outlet viewed the clip, it showed a faint thermal flare above the canopy, followed by a sudden cold patch moving diagonally through the frame. At 8:44, a new light cut across the canopy. Not bright, cold. There were no visible lights or reflective markers, no indication of human presence. Analysts who later examined screenshots described the object as elongated and vertical, emitting less heat than its surroundings, as if covered in moisture or dense material. A shape moved against the gradient, vertical, silent. The drone's coordinates intersected within roughly 150 feet of Ellison's final smartwatch GPS ping, accounting for expected GPS drift under dense canopy. Within a day of publication, the file vanished. The hosting site replaced the link with a message stating it had been removed for privacy violation. Attempts to verify ownership failed. The account used to upload the footage was deleted, and the original drone operator never came forward. The newspaper printed a brief correction stating that they could not confirm the clip's authenticity. Still, enough viewers had archived it to maintain discussion. The alignment of timestamps, trail camera at 8:41, drone at 8:44, smartwatch at 8:46, formed a triangular chronology that no one could dismiss. 3 devices, 3 timestamps, and nothing after. By early April, official search efforts concluded. Reports described weather degradation, reduced visibility, and low likelihood of recovery. Official reports later summarized 3 confirmed data points, each drawn from separate devices. The trail camera upload at 8:41 p.m., the smartwatch cessation at 8:46 p.m., and the drone telemetry anomaly logged at 8:44 p.m. Beyond those times, every trace ended. There were no confirmed sightings, no physical remains, and no identified suspects. Just silence where a man used to be. When spring arrived, the online focus shifted from search coordination to retrospective analysis. A few persistent archivists built composite maps linking every timestamp and coordinate into an interactive model. The overlap revealed a convergence zone less than 2 acres wide, dense forest floor bordered by drainage slopes, where line of sight dropped abruptly. It was the same valley Ellison had documented years earlier while mapping fire breaks. He'd walked that ground 100 times. But had something else been walking it longer? In June, another anomaly drew attention. Users tracking residual logins to Ellison's accounts noted new activity. Someone had accessed his long-abandoned video page from a masked IP routed through Oregon. The login session lasted less than 10 minutes, but resulted in deletion of all previous uploads except one titled Night Vision Test Number 2. Its upload timestamp predated the disappearance by exactly 2 minutes. Why leave only that one? The surviving clip, less than 10 seconds long, depicted a simple setup, Ellison adjusting the trail camera while testing focus. In the final frame, his reflection appeared faintly on the lens housing. Behind him, deeper in the trees, a dim outline curved across the periphery, slightly delayed in movement as though the reflection and the object behind it were out of sync. The detail went unnoticed for months until frame-stabilized copies circulated through forums. When slowed, the offset became clearer. Ellison's arm lowered first, but the faint silhouette of the same motion lingered a half-beat longer before fading, as if something had been learning how to mirror him and hadn't quite perfected the timing. Investigators declined to comment on the reactivation of his account. The provider confirmed only that the deletion and upload records were genuine and originated from correct credentials. Forensic analysts couldn't determine whether the login came from recovered hardware or a reused credential on another machine, leaving the source of access unresolved. Someone still had his passwords. Someone was still watching his work. By July, the case was formally suspended. The forest had taken everything back. Only the footage remained, clear, silent, watching. The 3 remaining points, the camera, drone, and watch, formed the last measurable chain in a story without closure. Local news moved on, and Moss reclaimed the search site. Online, only fragments survived, mirrored clips, conflicting diagrams, fading threads of speculation. The last trace of Mark Ellison came from a device built to record what passed before it, not what lingered behind. Everything after that was interpretation, pixels, reflections, and data gaps where a person should have been. Maybe something else had been watching him. when Brian Phillips parked at the Farley's Prairie Trailhead in Ocala National Forest around 2 p.m., planning a simple 4-mile loop through the pine flatwoods. The temperature sat at 73 degrees, and the forest was unusually quiet. He had covered roughly a mile and a half when he noticed something moving through the palmetto scrub approximately 200 feet ahead. His first assumption was a black bear, common in this part of the forest. Black bears were frequently sighted in Ocala National Forest, especially during spring when they emerged from their winter dens. He stopped walking and reached for his phone, more out of excitement than concern. The figure moved between two longleaf pines, and Brian activated his camera. Through the screen, he watched as the shape emerged into a small clearing. It was walking upright. The stride was too long, the proportions completely wrong for a human. The shoulders were massive, easily 3 feet across. Brian estimated the height at around 7.5 feet, though the uneven terrain made precision difficult. Dark brown hair covered the entire body, matted and thick. It moved with purpose, not the shambling gait of a bear on its hind legs. Bears could walk upright for short distances, but their movement was clumsy, unstable. This was different. Each step looked natural, balanced, as if walking on 2 legs was its primary mode of movement. Brian kept the phone steady, trying to capture as much detail as possible. The creature moved through dappled sunlight, filtering through the pine canopy. In the brighter patches, the hair appeared lighter, almost reddish-brown. In the shadows, it looked nearly black. The head sat directly on the shoulders with almost no visible neck. When the creature turned slightly, Brian could see the profile. The forehead sloped back sharply from the pronounced brow. The jaw jutted forward. It was not a bear. It was not a person. Brian's recording shows 47 seconds of this initial sighting. The creature moved from left to right across the clearing, never looking in his direction. Its arms swung naturally at its sides, longer than human arms, reaching past where the knees would be. The legs were thick and powerful, each step covering nearly 4 feet of ground. When it reached the far tree line, it paused. The head turned slightly, profile visible for just 3 seconds. The face showed a pronounced brow ridge and a flat nose. Then it disappeared into the dense understory. Every instinct told Brian to return to his vehicle. The parking area was less than 2 miles back. He could be there in 30 minutes at a quick pace. Instead, he moved forward. He would later tell investigators that something compelled him to follow, a curiosity that overrode his fear. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Whatever he had just seen, it was real, and it was in front of him. He stayed on the trail for another 100 feet, then stepped off into the palmetto. The creature had left disturbed vegetation, bent fronds showing the direction of travel. The path was unmistakable. Something large had pushed through here, and recently. Brian kept his phone raised, recording continuously now. The footage shows his hands shaking, the image bouncing with each step. The palmetto grew thicker off-trail, the stiff fronds reaching waist-high. They scraped against his pants and grabbed at his boots. Progress was slow. He had to push through with his free hand while keeping the camera up with his right. Sweat began to form on his forehead, despite the moderate temperature. The exertion combined with adrenaline made his breathing heavier. He tracked the disturbances for roughly 300 feet, moving deeper into an area where the pines grew denser and the understory thickened with saw palmetto and gallberry. The canopy blocked much of the afternoon sun. Shadows stretched across the forest floor. The temperature felt cooler here, away from direct sunlight. His video timestamp showed 2:17 p.m. when he stopped again. Something had changed in the forest. The usual sounds, the distant birds and rustling of small animals, had ceased completely. Brian panned his camera slowly from left to right. The recording captured his breathing, faster now, and the crunch of dry pine needles under his boots. He stood completely still, listening. Nothing. The silence felt heavy, oppressive. Movement flickered in his peripheral vision. He spun left, camera following. The creature stood 80 feet away, partially obscured by a dead pine. But it was facing him now. The footage shows a clear frontal view for nearly 8 seconds. The body was broader than any human, the chest barrel-shaped and covered in dark hair that appeared lighter around the face. The arms hung at its sides, hands visible, each finger clearly defined. The hands looked almost human in structure, but larger, much larger. Each hand appeared to be at least 12 inches long. The face stared directly at the camera. The eyes were dark, sunken beneath that heavy brow ridge. Brian froze. The creature did not move. It simply watched him, standing perfectly still in a way that felt deliberate, patient. Then it stepped out from behind the tree. The full height became apparent. Brian's angle, shooting slightly upward, confirmed this thing stood well over 7 feet tall. The legs were thick, powerful, built for strength rather than speed. Or so Brian thought. It took 2 steps forward, closing the distance to about 70 feet. Each step was measured, controlled. Brian's camera lowered slightly, his arm wavering. The footage becomes less steady. His hands were shaking more now. The creature took another step. Brian backed up. His boot caught on something, a root or vine hidden under the pine needles, and the camera jerked as he caught himself. He stumbled but did not fall. When he raised the phone again, the creature had moved. It was now 50 feet away. It had covered 20 feet in the second or two when Brian's camera was down. The speed was wrong. Something that large should not be able to move that quickly, that quietly. The recording shows Brian turning and walking quickly back the way he came. He kept the camera pointed behind him, over his shoulder. The creature followed. It matched his pace, maintaining the 50-foot distance. The spacing felt intentional, not close enough to be an immediate threat, but close enough to maintain pressure. Brian increased his speed. The creature did the same. Its movements remained smooth, efficient. The footage captured nearly 2 minutes of this pursuit. The creature never closed the gap further, but it never fell behind. It walked with the same steady, powerful stride. Its head remained fixed on Brian, tracking his movement through the forest. The eyes never left him. Brian glanced forward to navigate, then back to check the creature's position. Each time he looked back, it was still there, still maintaining that exact distance. The precision felt wrong. Animals did not behave this way. They either attacked or they fled. This was something else entirely. Brian reached the area where he first left the trail. He scrambled up onto the path, nearly dropping his phone. The footage shows dirt and vegetation, then the trail ahead as he turned to run. He looked back one more time. The creature stood at the edge of the trail, 40 feet away now. It had stopped moving. Brian ran. The recording went dark as he shoved the phone in his pocket, but the audio continued. His breathing came in gasps, his footsteps pounding on the hard-packed sand trail. The audio captured something else. A sound that started low, almost a rumble, then rose in pitch. It lasted perhaps 5 seconds, unlike anything in the Florida wilderness. Not a bear, not a panther, not any known animal. The vocalization seemed to come from multiple directions, echoing through the pines. Brian's running footsteps stuttered, slowed. The camera came back out of his pocket. The footage shows the trail ahead, empty. Brian turned in a full circle, nothing visible in any direction. He moved forward again, no longer running but walking fast. His breathing had settled slightly. The trail curved ahead, returning toward the prairie. Brian checked behind him every few seconds. The forest remained empty, but something felt wrong. He later described it as a pressure, a sense of being watched from all sides. The footage shows him scanning the tree line continuously. At 2:31 p.m., roughly 14 minutes after the initial sighting, he was approximately half a mile from his vehicle. A crack echoed through the forest. The sound was sharp, loud like a gunshot. Brian spun toward the sound. His camera captured a pine branch, easily 6 inches in diameter, falling to the trail 30 feet ahead. It hit the ground with a heavy thud that sent up dust. The branch had broken cleanly, snapped near the trunk. There was no wind. The air was still. Pine branches did not simply break on their own. Brian approached slowly, his footsteps hesitant. The footage shows him looking up into the canopy. The tree where the branch had broken stood at least 40 feet tall. Nothing visible in the upper branches. No movement? He stepped around the branch and continued. His pace had slowed considerably now. He checked the forest on both sides constantly. 20 feet later, another crack. This time from the right side of the trail. Another branch, this one even larger, perhaps 8 inches across. It crashed through the understory, breaking smaller branches on its way down. It landed 15 feet from where Brian stood. The impact shook the ground slightly. Brian could feel it through his boots. He stopped walking completely. His breathing was audible on the recording now, coming in short, quick bursts. He raised his camera, filming the forest on both sides. The footage shows dense vegetation, shadows between the trees. The palmetto was too thick to see more than 20 feet in most directions. He called out, asking if anyone was there. His voice carried through the quiet forest, sounding small and uncertain. No response came, not a sound. He waited for perhaps 15 seconds, the camera still rolling. Nothing. He started moving again, faster now. His walk was almost a jog. The trail straightened ahead, offering a clear view for perhaps 100 feet. Brian focused on that distant section, on reaching open ground. If he could get back to the prairie, to the trailhead, he would be safe. The parking area felt impossibly far away now, though it was less than half a mile. The third branch came from directly overhead. The crack was louder, sharper. It sounded closer. Brian looked up just as it fell. The footage captured his dive to the side, the camera swinging wildly. Sky, trees, ground, all blurred together. He hit the ground hard, landing on his left side. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs. The phone flew from his hand, tumbling through the air. It landed in the palmetto, camera facing the trail. The branch, nearly 8 feet long and as thick as a man's thigh, slammed into the trail where he had been standing. The impact sent up a cloud of dust and pine needles. If Brian had not moved, if he had been even a second slower, the branch would have struck him directly. The phone landed in the palmetto, camera facing the trail. The angle showed Brian on his hands and knees, scrambling to his feet. He looked up into the canopy, then all around. His mouth moved, words inaudible on the recording. He stepped toward where the phone lay, reaching down. Before he could grab it, a rock struck the ground 3 feet from the phone. The rock hit with force, embedding itself slightly in the soft sand. Then another, landing between Brian and the device. The rocks were substantial, each the size of a softball. They came from the right side of the trail. Brian jerked back, stumbling. A third rock hit closer to the phone, then a fourth. They formed a pattern, a line across the trail. Brian changed direction, moving left, circling to reach his phone from a different angle. More rocks pelted the trail, 5 more in rapid succession. They fell with precision, each one landing exactly where Brian was trying to move. They formed a line, as if thrown deliberately to block his path. The spacing was too exact to be random. Brian stopped. He stared in the direction the rocks were coming from. The footage, from its position in the undergrowth, captured his profile. His body language showed tension, hands raised slightly in front of him. Defensive. He took a step back, then another. His head turned slowly, scanning the tree line, looking for the source. Something massive moved through the palmetto on the right side of the trail. The vegetation shook violently, fronds bending and breaking. Something large was pushing through, and it was not being careful about stealth anymore. The sound grew louder, closer. Brian turned to run. The footage captured his legs as he passed the phone, sprinting down the trail. His boots kicked up sand with each stride. The sounds of breaking vegetation grew louder. Whatever was in the forest was moving fast, parallel to the trail. The palmetto rattled and shook along a 30-foot section. Brian's footsteps faded slightly as he got further from the phone. His breathing was ragged, panicked. The sound of breaking branches continued, getting closer to the camera's position. The entire understory seemed to be moving. Then it appeared. The creature stepped out of the palmetto 20 feet from where the phone lay. The angle captured it from roughly waist height. The massive legs, trunk-like and covered in dark hair. Each leg was thicker than any human thigh, the muscles visible even through the hair as it moved. The arms hanging forward slightly, the hands flexed, fingers spreading and closing. It turned its head, looking down the trail in the direction Brian had gone. The face was fully visible for nearly 4 seconds, heavy brow ridge casting shadows over the eyes, deep-set eyes that reflected light slightly, giving them an almost luminous quality. Flat nose with large nostrils that flared as it breathed. The mouth was closed, the jaw prominent and strong. Hair covered most of the face but thinned around the eyes and mouth, revealing dark skin underneath. The expression was not aggressive, but focused, intelligent. The eyes showed awareness, calculation. The creature took 3 steps onto the trail, each footfall visible in the frame. The feet were enormous, easily 18 inches long, wider than a human foot. The toes splayed out with each step, gripping the sand. 5 toes were clearly visible on the left foot as it lifted. The foot flexed naturally, the arch visible. These were not bear paws, not costume pieces. The movement was too natural, too complex. The creature paused in the middle of the trail, turned its head back toward the camera for just a moment. The eyes seemed to look directly at the lens. Then it looked down the trail again, toward where Brian had disappeared. It dropped into a forward stance, weight shifting onto the balls of its feet. The knees bent slightly. The arms came up, hands positioned forward. Then it ran. The speed was shocking. The creature covered ground faster than seemed possible for something so large. Its gait was not quite human, the stride too long, each step covering nearly 6 feet. The arm swing was too pronounced, the arms pumping with tremendous force. But it was clearly bipedal running, not the quadrupedal gallop of a bear. The power in each stride was visible in how its feet struck the ground, sending up small clouds of sand. Within 3 seconds, it had disappeared around the curve in the trail. The sound of its footfalls continued for several seconds more, heavy thuds that faded into the distance. The forest fell silent again. The phone continued recording from its position in the palmetto, showing only the empty trail and the rocks scattered across the sand. Small clouds of dust still hung in the air where the creature had run. 43 seconds later, a scream cut through the forest. It was human, Brian's voice coming from perhaps 200 feet away. The scream was raw, primal, filled with terror and pain. It lasted 2 seconds, then cut off abruptly. Impact sounds followed, something heavy hitting the ground. A grunt, distinctly human. More sounds of struggle, breaking vegetation, thrashing, then silence again. Complete silence. The phone recorded nothing but that silence for nearly 30 seconds. No birds, no insects, nothing. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. The forest held its breath. Movement appeared at the edge of the frame. Brian came into view, crawling on the trail. He was bleeding from his forehead, blood running down the left side of his face. The cut was deep, possibly from hitting the ground or a rock. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, the fabric hanging loose. Scratches covered his exposed shoulder, some deep enough to bleed. He crawled toward the phone, each movement showing pain. His left arm dragged slightly, not moving correctly. The shoulder hung at an odd angle, dislocated. He reached the phone, grabbed it with his right hand. His fingers were shaking, barely able to grip. The camera swung up, showing his face for just a moment. The blood, the wide eyes, the dirt caked on his right cheek. His mouth was open, breathing hard. Then the footage went dark as he pulled the phone close to his chest, curling around it protectively. The audio continued. Brian's breathing was ragged, gasping. Each breath sounded painful, catching in his throat. Footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. Not running now. Walking. Slow. Each footfall was distinct, spaced several feet apart. They stopped close, very close, perhaps 3 feet from where Brian lay. A new sound emerged, a breathing that was not Brian's. Deeper, slower, resonating. It came from directly above the microphone. Something was standing over him. The breathing was steady, controlled. Whatever stood there was not winded from the chase. Brian's breathing stopped as if he was holding his breath, trying to be completely still. The other breathing continued, a sniffing sound, like an animal investigating something. long inhalations, processing scent. This continued for nearly 20 seconds. Each second must have felt like an eternity for Brian, lying there wounded with something massive standing over him. A low sound, almost a grunt, came from whatever was standing above Brian. The tone was neither aggressive nor curious. It sounded almost satisfied, confirmatory. Then the heavy footsteps again, moving away. Each step clearly audible. They grew fainter but did not hurry. The creature was walking, not running. The footsteps stopped somewhere in the distance, still close enough to hear, perhaps 40 feet away. Brian's breathing resumed, sharp and quick, hyperventilating. He did not move. The audio captured him lying there for another minute, maybe longer. His breathing slowly steadied, though it remained fast. Finally, movement, fabric rustling, the sound of him sitting up, a groan of pain, his voice barely a whisper, words unclear. Could have been prayer? Could have been nothing? The camera came back up, pointing ahead. The footage showed the trail, empty now. Brian panned right, then left. Nothing visible. He struggled to his feet, the camera shaking violently. Getting up took nearly 10 seconds. Each movement was agony. His left ankle gave out the first time he tried to stand, and he dropped back to one knee with a gasp. On the second attempt, he made it upright, but could not put full weight on the left leg. He started moving, limping badly. His left leg was not working properly. The ankle was either badly sprained or broken. Each step came with a grunt of pain. The camera pointed down at the trail, showing his boots and the sand passing beneath. Blood dripped from his forehead, leaving dark spots on the sand. He moved perhaps 30 feet, each step slower than the last. Then he stopped. He raised the camera again. The creature stood in the trail ahead. The distance was hard to judge from the footage, but investigators later estimated roughly 60 feet based on known trail features visible in the frame. It faced Brian directly, standing in the center of the trail. The lighting was better here, the canopy thinner. Late afternoon sun filtered through, illuminating the creature clearly. The footage captured details that had been obscured in shadows before. The massive shoulders, the broad chest rising and falling with breath. The arms, so much longer than human proportions, hanging relaxed at its sides. The face, mostly hair-covered, but the eyes visible. Dark eyes, watching. Not black like a bear's eyes, but dark brown, almost human in color. The creature's chest moved with its breathing, slow and steady. It shifted its weight from one foot to the other, a subtle movement, but distinctly visible. It did not advance. It simply stood there, blocking the trail, watching Brian with what could only be described as curiosity. Brian took a step backward. His injured leg nearly buckled, but he caught himself. The creature did not react. Its head remained level, eyes fixed on Brian. Another step back. Brian's breathing was loud on the audio, each breath catching with pain. Still no movement from the creature. It waited. Brian turned and began moving away, faster now despite the limp. His body was running on pure adrenaline, overriding the pain signals. He kept the camera pointed behind him. The creature remained where it stood, watching him retreat. Its posture was relaxed, non-threatening. It made no move to follow. Brian covered roughly 40 feet, each step visible in the shaky footage. He fell once, going down hard on his right knee. The camera caught the impact, then sky as he nearly dropped the phone. He recovered, got back up, kept moving. When he glanced back once more, the creature was gone. The trail stood empty. No movement in the vegetation, no sound. It had simply disappeared, as if it had never been there at all. The remainder of the footage showed Brian's painful journey back to the trailhead. He fell twice more, the camera capturing the ground, then sky, then the trail again as he recovered. He never stopped checking behind him. The forest remained quiet, no signs of pursuit. At 2:49 p.m., he reached the parking area. His vehicle was the only one there. The footage showed him fumbling with his keys, dropping them once before getting the door open. The recording ended as he collapsed into the driver's seat. Brian drove directly to Advent Health Waterman in Tavares, 35 miles from the forest. Medical records show he arrived at 3:27 p.m. with lacerations to his scalp requiring 12 stitches, a dislocated left shoulder, severe bruising across his back and left side, and a sprained left ankle. The attending physician documented Brian's account of being attacked by an unknown animal while hiking. Brian turned over his phone to Tavares Police Department that evening. The footage, totaling 31 minutes and 47 seconds, underwent analysis by 3 separate wildlife experts. All confirmed the subject in the video was not a bear, not a person in a costume, and not any known animal in Florida. The proportions, movement patterns, and physical characteristics did not match any documented species. Frame-by-frame analysis of the clearest shots showed details impossible to fabricate with 2025 consumer technology, including individual hair movement, muscle definition beneath the hair, and micro-expressions in the facial features. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission investigated the location 3 days after the incident. Officers found disturbed vegetation consistent with Brian's account, broken branches at the reported locations, and impressions in soft ground near the trail. One clear track measured 17 inches long and 9 inches across at the widest point. Casting was attempted, but the ground conditions produced only a partial mold. The investigation report concluded that Brian had encountered something in Ocala National Forest, but could not determine what species. Brian Phillips recovered from his physical injuries within 8 weeks. He has refused all media requests and will not disclose the exact trail location beyond the general area of Farlow's Prairie. In his single statement to investigators, he described the moment the creature stood over him as the most terrifying experience of his life, not because of what it did, but because of what it chose not to do. The footage remains the clearest, most detailed Bigfoot evidence ever captured in Florida, and the only documented case of physical contact with injuries requiring medical treatment.